3spooky5me Part 4. Are you afraid of the dark? The Tale of the Dollmaker. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the New to You Show. We're wrapping up our 3spooky5me Halloween October extravaganza. Tomorrow is Halloween!
Ooh, trick or treat!
So, I'm one of your ghosts, John Holt, with me.
I'm your other host, Julian Cage.
I'm a host, Keith Spooky Vincent.
And we have two visitors from beyond.
Hi, I'm Jocko. For real.
Hi, Matt Schwartz.
And
Welcome,
they're
guys.
calling in from location through a Ouija board
Yes.
from the other side.
I'm calling from Transylvania
So-
65000.
The scariest part of this episode is that this is the last episode where we'll have both of them on as guests
Yeah, this time.
of this time.
This time.
So far, the inhabitation of our podcast by those spirits
For a whole month, we've
Yeah.
had them. So that's great.
locked up.
It's been a good month.
Yeah.
Would you like to be on a podcast? It's a Saw reference. Because this show is
Sort of.
This show's kind of torture porn for your ears. It's like the opposite of ASMR.
Yeah.
Which is somehow kinky to some people.
That's right. All right. So before we get into our topic, what are you wearing for Halloween, Jules?
Whoa. I don't yet have a costume. I'm gonna have to
Well, you
pass.
better hurry. You're gonna have. You got one day to pull it
Yeah, you
off.
got a day.
I know. I'm gonna be my evil twin, I guess.
All right. With extra teeth everywhere on
Mhm.
you.
Yep.
Just a goatee. I was wondering why you were growing that out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be dressed up as the Jolly Green Giant because we're gonna dress up my kid as a Venus flytrap.
Oh, cool. So you
Yeah,
excited
fun
for
little
that?
costume. I don't know.
You're not dressed up as like a corn kernel?
Maybe I don't know.
Is there a little green giant?
There is. There's a. I forget. I think his name's Sprout.
All
Jolly
right.
Green Giant and Sprout.
Yep.
Yep.
You're right.
Do it.
No, he's a Venus flytrap kid.
And Jolly Green Giantess.
No, I might still change it and decide to be like Seymour Krellborn,
Oh, nice.
and Elise can be
Nice.
Audrey, and he could be the
Audrey too?
adolescent version of Audrey too. Yeah.
You could be a giant fly.
Hey.
Yeah.
Or I could be the guy from the movie The Fly.
Yeah.
Before he
Brundle
turns-
fly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect.
You're like, I
Um,
can't
I'm
find
not
the
nearly
keys.
as sexy as him, though.
Can't find the keys to my teleporter. Whoa.
I'm gonna dress up. Well, I don't know what I'm gonna do now. I thought that I was gonna be very clever and flip and dress as one of the skeletons that danced alongside David S. Pumpkins from last year's Halloween phenomenon. And I thought that it would be very funny and flip of me to do it a year later. But I saw a tweet that made me believe that there will
it
be
may
another
recur.
David S.
In
Pumpkins.
fact, it
this
may
year.
be, if if this is a
It
Monday.
might have already
after, it may
happened.
have
Yeah, I
aired
think it already aired. Yeah. So
less than 48 hours ago.
Wait, what is David? What is that?
The Tom
Tom
Hanks
Hanks.
skit
Oh,
where
yeah.
he's like, it's like a haunted
pumpkin
house, and they're going through the haunted elevator, and he keeps recurring. We'll have to watch it. We'll watch it after this because
it's
it
the
sounds like
best.
it's new to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
it is.
All right.
When did this? Was this a
Last
new?
Last
year.
year. There's like a
Ah.
spoof. All right.
Yeah.
We're gonna.
You're in for a
Doc-
Is it
All
the
right,
one-
I'll go through this really quick so we can get to that. Cool. Okay.
Is
All
it is it Keenan? Is it Kieran Killen and him? Like where they're like
We'll
it's spooky animatronics?
No, we'll show you. We'll show you the thing.
Okay.
You'll enjoy it. So
'Cause-
Matt,
'cause
what
was
are you gonna
similar.
do for Halloween?
Nothing too original, but I will put on some disgusting gory makeup that makes people turn away in fright. Usually involving at least one of my eyes being torn out entirely.
All right.
Yeah, that's amazing. We throw these huge Halloween parties every year. We're gearing up for ours now. Last year, one of our friends came with the most terrifying costume where they were completely normal, except that they had very lovingly and carefully applied a second row of teeth, like an upper jaw, to right above their cheekbone,
Nice.
just sticking out of their face.
Like Two-Face Chan?
It was very unsettling.
Wow.
She was just completely normal, except that she had a whole bunch of teeth coming out of her cheek.
That's kind of similar to
Yeah.
one of Jules's costumes. Why don't you describe this costume, Jules?
A classic. A classic.
The Emperor.
The Emperor.
Oh.
The
Has no
Emperor's no
clothes.
clothes.
So I was just dressed in a suit, which at the time was unusual for me, a suit and tie, and everybody was like, "What are you?" And then I would point downward, where I was wearing basically like
A prosthetic.
a giant, like very
Large.
lifelike wing, basically.
Amazing.
and the packaging for this dildo was called the Emperor.
Nice.
And it was terrific. And once everybody got drunk, there was a lot of handling of the Emperor.
Mhm.
People paid their tribute and stuff.
I might be a garbage pail kid.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Halloween.
That's
I'm
good,
gonna
that's
make a
good.
big paper mache head.
From the movie, like one of
I'm
those
gonna
ones.
be
From the trading card?
from the cards. I'm gonna do like more of a Cabbage Patch like kid because they didn't.
Are you
do-
gonna make your own? Are you gonna make your own like
I'm gonna make a head. Yeah.
Jaundice John or something like that?
No,
or-
I'm gonna do probably like Mugged Marcus or Mugged Marvin. He's like a beat up. He's got like a footprint on
K.O.
his head.
Carl.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
K.O. Carl was the boxing one who's
Yeah.
twisted. Mug Marcus is like he's got his teeth are all like gums and they're all like little U shapes, like an ocean. You draw an ocean, but like one tooth is still in his mouth, and he's just all beat up
He's
and just
just-
kind of like hey with blood coming out him.
Perfect.
Mug Marcus. That's what my Halloween costume would be. So we have gone through 3 other spooky picks, and we're gonna roll into our final, which is the scariest thing of all, as we get towards Samhain and All Saints Day. Jocko, let's take it away.
My pick for this year's Halloween is a specific episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark called The Tale of the Dollmaker. Are You Afraid of the Dark, of course, is an anthology horror series for children that ran in the 1990s on Nickelodeon. It's basically, it's great. It's a group of kids that are the same kids every episode meet at a campfire, and it's one of their turns to tell a scary story. They set up the story, throw dust into the fire that makes it flare up, and then we go into a completely different story with different actors, a whole different, set and situations. This is in the 3rd season. They really are rolling at this point. I'll briefly describe the plot. You should watch it if you can. It's very easy to find, both on Amazon and on other places. And you should watch it. It's 22 minutes of your life, and it's great. The basic premise is that a young girl goes to stay with her aunt and uncle, and she goes every summer, and it's usually a drag, except that her friend had moved in next door, and so she was looking forward to hanging out with her friend again, who
It's
she
like
hung
the
out with.
only bright spot to
The
go
only
and
bright
visit
spot.
the uncle and aunt.
Exactly, is that there's a girl next door for her to play with. This year, she goes and the girl's not there. She's told that the girl moved away. But you can tell from the aunt and uncle that there's something they're not telling her. There's something they don't want to break to her. She goes exploring the house next door, goes upstairs and finds a beautiful dollhouse, and then sees a door in the attic that there's light shining through, and it looks strange and out of place. As the story progresses, she learns that she can go into that dollhouse, or into that door, which leads her into the dollhouse. And when she's in the dollhouse, she sees that her friend hasn't left, and later it's revealed to her that her friend has disappeared, and that's why this house has been abandoned. That's why the family has moved away. But she hasn't disappeared. She's in this door, which leads to the dollhouse. And so then she has to help her friend get out of the dollhouse. The true terror of this episode comes from the fact that her friend is turning into a doll. She's becoming porcelain. She's becoming sort of vacant. And so it's a race against time to see if they can escape the dollhouse. Did I miss any major points?
I think just that the dollhouse is like a like a perfect replica of the larger house that she's in.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's a good one. It's weird.
It's clean. It's very, very weird for an Are You Afraid of the Dark? It's a series I loved growing up, and a series I've revisited, in sort of milestones of my like growing up and being like, oh my God, it's on YouTube. Like you go through this through your late adolescence and early adulthood. But I haven't seen this episode in a while, but this is one that I've returned to again and again. It's not one that really, it's not big and bombastic. There are episodes like the first one, The Laughing in the Dark, is probably the most famous one. That's with the cigar smoking clown in the clown house. So that's probably one of the most famous ones. There are other amazing, amazing episodes all throughout, and plenty of duds, it should be said as well. There are plenty of episodes that don't really hit their mark. This one's really strange because it just kind of happens. It's slow. It's 22 minutes long, but it's slow. Almost nothing happens. There's almost no...
Well, there is a persistent amount of crime. So you have a young girl who's breaking and entering.
Yes.
And then her aunt and uncle who continue to break and enter and just
it's
nil.
No, because
they're taking care of.
Caretaking the
Yeah,
house.
sure.
That's why they have the keys.
Right.
Sure they are.
Right.
And
The
initially,
people-
she's not breaking in. She has the keys the first time.
No, the first time she's like the door's just open.
Yeah, the door
And,
was
that's
just
and the
open.
auntie
Right.
and the auntie was like, "Oh yes, because I was in here." It's like,
Yeah.
"No, auntie, what are you doing in here?"
It's a crime.
Exactly.
Well, no, she smelled marijuana, so she was allowed to
yeah.
come in.
I smell pot. I'm coming in.
So before I sort of broaden it out, I do want to talk a little bit about the effect that this had on me as a child, because it's profound. And that's why I brought this up. My life is definitely focused around horror. I love horror as a fan. I create it creatively. I ingest it all the time. I love it. And this all really started with, if I think about it, my first thing to say is, I got into it because of Goosebumps books, which I've talked about on the show before. But really, it was this episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? It chilled me to the bone as a kid. Watching it again today, is it still scary? No, nothing really happens. But that look of vacancy in her friend, and at one point, you should watch this before, because there's nothing. It's not even worth saying it's a spoiler. It just happens. Yeah. At one point, her hand falls off of her arm, and that shook me to the core in a way that I can't explain.
There's
in
a
a
really
way
good
that
sound.
is a really great
sound.
porcelain sort of scraping sound, and there's this resigned sadness in her. And the brilliant thing about the direction and the writing of this, is that as soon as we see that happen, once we're shown the danger that this girl is being turned to a doll, and that is bad because her hand fell off. As soon as we see that, our main protagonist, who is a little bit darker skinned as well, which I think is a purposeful choice in the casting, our main protagonist goes to pull down a dresser and sees that her palms, the tops of her hands, are beginning to turn that porcelain white. And that, to me, is the core, a perfect little slice of horror setup and payoff right there. It's a master course in very succinct storytelling, which we've talked about over and over again over these past few weeks.
I think too, what's really nice about this one is one of the sort of terrifying things. There's a moment where she is she's going through the door and she hasn't actually stepped through.
Yes.
And the uncle saves her and says, "Look what you're about to do." And there is no inner corridor. This is not a portal. It's just a straight drop to their death. And so that's the first was this a
3 floors up, there's
Right.
just a
Right.
door
Who's gonna die.
that goes right out.
and that you get that again. Well, you get that again when she first steps into the spot where she tests it with her foot, and okay, she's safe. And then when they get to getting out of there, now they're faced with this choice, and that's where I wonder with a lot of these Are You Afraid of the Darks, if there was if they always were there's going to be 2 endings to this, and it depends on what the censors let us get away with, because it could have ended with you hear the aunt and uncle hear this girl screaming ah, and they come over and she's her arm is broken and there's
Right.
the porcelain shards of her friend in the dress,
Right. That would be great.
laying on this concrete patio right there beneath this house. That was the ending that I wrote in my head as I saw them
Right.
like going out this window.
I'm
In
trying
a
to remember.
post-apocalyptic
Right.
No,
Canada.
this is just like a nice lakeside environment.
Yeah.
I'm trying
in
to remember
Canada.
if they all, of course, in Canada, yeah, all in Canada. I'm trying to remember if they all had happy or resolved endings, and I don't think they did. I think there were a few episodes that were ambiguous or even dark and sort of like cackling in the
Well, if
night.
I remember, if there were any that weren't like straight up like you escaped, it was more like a Twilight Zone ending where it was just like, so now maybe they're trapped in this
Right,
place or
right.
something like that.
And I guess there's a couple things that like I would have maybe plussed, like having another, I don't know, like a button where it's like is another doll in the house, like sitting in a chair opposite her or something, and they get out and they're fine, but like you get your like tear in the eye of this like doll that's like,
Right.
lost in there, like that sort of like really drive the
That would have been nice. Yeah.
like the creep factor up a little bit.
The other thing that I found like kind of strange and creepy throughout was the behavior of the aunt and uncle. Like
Right.
for a while I was like I started to think they were involved like more directly and that they were orchestrating this and that maybe they had done something to the friend, and because they just had this their performances were just strange. Didn't you guys think so? Like
It's well,
I mean, maybe it was just bad acting, but it just came off as just very strange and added to kind of the creepy factor. And also, like, the way they staged, like, her overhearing their conversation. And I don't know, there was just everything was a little off. And I don't know how intentional that was, but it added to the creepy atmosphere of it. But she was also, like, the protagonist is, like, very bold and courageous because
Yeah,
she's doing all
so
this stuff.
cool. Yeah.
She's doing all this stuff that as a child, I'm like, what, you're going back to that house alone in the dark at night? I'm like, what? And you're going to then break the window and like break
so
in?
good.
War crime.
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah, I'm
just
a-
a criminal.
And I'm like, I don't know. To me, that's somewhat like not believable. Is there really any children that would do that?
Well,
That would be that courageous?
the key to this
This
is
is
that
Canadian.
she believes from the very beginning that she's going to rescue her friend.
Right.
And,
And you
you know,
already-
it is a life or death situation
And
for
you've
her,
already
so-
noted that like basically weirdness runs in her family. Like her aunt and uncle are clearly touched, and, and so,
I think the uncle is great in this.
Oh,
too.
he is
The
pretty fun,
acting is, of course, what you'd expect from a 22-minute. I guess for them, what ends up being about 18 minutes of screen time.
yeah.
But he's wonderful. He looks great. It's really cool, and she's amazing. The little girl.
Mhm.
I looked her up on IMDb, and it looks like she just did a little more kid acting, and then like went on to like write some like food documentary television shows.
Do you think the girl who was playing the doll girl was cast or like was like she's not a very good actor?
Yeah, probably. Like, let's just
'Cause,
make
like,
her the doll.
The only other
Yeah.
time we see her, she's like waving from.
Yeah,
the
they don't
Yes.
even give her a line.
Yeah.
I thought that was very doll-like and weird also.
Yeah, very odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, just be yourself.
Right.
But I will say that the interesting thing is about the altogether is just like you really lose track of like how long is she supposed to have been there? It seems like a day. Like
Yeah.
she gets there, uncle says, "Hey, can you help me out dealing with the septic tank?" And she's like, "No, thanks. I'm
I
going up
know.
to this abandoned house." I think it all happened like within a day.
Right.
I mean, so when she left, so the idea is that she saved her buddy. Then, like, mom comes to pick her up and she waves goodbye. That's that. Like,
Well, that's why it's so creepy.
I think she was maybe she was just visiting for the weekend.
well, that's what they said at the beginning. She's
Right.
just there for the weekend. But
And what I love is that it's implied that she not only saved her friend, but just completely convinced her aunt and uncle that her friend was captured in a dollhouse, because it like
Right.
the end tag is like,
exactly.
and that night her aunt and uncle built a big bonfire and burned
Burned
the
the-
dollhouse.
Yeah.
So she must have like completely convinced them that this was a supernatural
Well,
event.
remember
That would have been the shot of the third doll burning in the
Yeah.
Exactly.
or the aunt and uncle like with their collection of little
Oh,
dolls.
yeah.
That
and,
would have been awesome.
and they're like,
It's time to stop.
time to make a new doll.
Bernice, we have to stop now. The parents of the missing girl had told the aunt and uncle. So our main protagonists, aunt and uncle, were already being told by the parents of the missing girl, the
to
ex
look
neighbor.
after the house.
No, but they told
That the
they
girl was
told her
missing.
that she was missing, but that the house ate her.
Right.
Remember, because that was one of the things
Yeah.
that they were discussing. So maybe it didn't take much convincing because the grown-ups already kind of
Right.
said some things like that to them.
Right.
And they did a pretty lousy job, like knowing that of protecting her or whatever.
Well, I don't know.
Well,
At the
no,
same
because
time,
they didn't
were
believe
pretty-
it. Yeah.
That's true.
Oh, of the doll girl, the girl in pink, or the
No.
other girl?
No, their niece. Or...
I think they were pretty like
that's true. That's
for
true.
for a niece that's so
She was just so
persistent.
rebellious.
They pulled her off from the edge like pretty
That's
regularly.
true.
Yeah, totally.
Like, they were like,
Well, I like
they
that
were
that's a-
on her like for having to like clean out a septic tank. They had a lot of shit going on.
Right.
That's true.
And it was a little inconvenient for her to come up for the weekend,
Right.
especially with like another girl having gone missing. Like it probably wasn't appropriate. The mom was like had a
And
had
it
a
seems
date
like
and
there's
wanted to just like
Right.
shuck the kid off on her like
Yeah.
sister. So
And I do love that naturally that door in the attic that in reality leads out to a 3-story drop. That is why they're concerned, and that is why the aunt and uncle don't want her playing in the attic.
Mhm.
And he even says to her like, "We don't know why they would have ever built this door here."
Yeah.
So that's their concern. That's really nice. I feel like that's also
And they did try to barricade it. And yeah,
Yeah.
I am remembering all the lengths she went through to like.
yeah.
She broke and entered. She ripped off.
Yeah, she like remember they shackle her. They shackle her to the bed, and she chews off her own leg
right.
so that she can go hang out with her friend in the dollhouse.
So yeah, so this is like to me just a very clean, very quick little ghost story for kids that has stayed with me. As you mentioned in your about the short story that you haven't read it in 25 years, but it stuck with you. This is absolutely for me the episode that I can't get that image out of my head. It's scarier in my mind. I over time added aspects to it. I thought there was a doll maker that the name supplies. I like remember someone with scissors, but that is completely just transposed from some other thing, probably the Clock Tower video games or something like that I've added to this. But this core story, that idea of losing motor skills or losing functionality of your body slowly, which will then make it harder to escape the situation you're in, totally freaks me out.
And also the fact that you're kind of the lure for the next one
Yes.
at the same time.
It's like Stephen Hawking.
But what I like what I like about it is that they left that they didn't try to over explain it. They didn't say like,
Nope.
well, it turned out this house was used to be on evil doll maker's old workshop. You know what I mean? It's just like, no, that's just some evil magic attic, and that's what happens.
That is like a very important thing to remember for those of us who are like storytellers who do write fiction or work in fiction, especially when trying to do things for younger audiences, is that we want all these explanations and all this extra stuff. And I don't know, maybe it's not always necessary. Maybe you just need to get in and get out and scare them, and it's this like pure experience.
I have this, when I pitch, I've pitched quite a few shows and things like this, and everyone always, when you get in there, everyone thinks they're being smart by asking you all these questions, like, well, what's the reason? And I always feel like, it's good to know where to look to come up with those answers, but I don't feel like a lot of times you need those answers right on the tip of your tongue.
Right.
I just think that there's if you leave something amorphous, you leave room for the growth of the thing. If you go into it, with this elaborate backstory about the attic and why it wants to eat kids, then I don't know. It takes away from our imaginings of why that happened.
Right. Like
Right.
if you can just say like, I have the best words, and I'm gonna make America great again.
Yeah.
And people will fill in the blanks.
Dude, I know so many more words than like everybody else, so it's fine.
The best words.
The best ones, they're tremendous.
It's so interesting. This is the episode that traumatized you. Only because, I actually don't. First of all, just the fact that it is pretty upbeat and
Yeah.
happy is like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, well, I think I was traumatized like by seeing like Alien or The Exorcist, like when I shouldn't have been young and stuff. And I'm just like, okay, well, here's a story about a little girl who goes saves her friend. You're just like, that's the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my life.
I cannot even describe to you how gentle of a child I was. Really, just like I used to, if I ever would tell a lie, I would turn myself in and say, Mom, I told a lie. I need to go to my room. And the guilt would consume
See, like
me.
you were breaking out in hives when she like broke the glass.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
door,
I was like,
being
no.
Oh my god! Just try the handle first.
Yeah.
Don't break the glass.
It's this weird dichotomy of
How
like,
old were you when you saw it?
this.
He was 22.
I was 22. Yeah. Just saw it on YouTube. I saw it the night it came out.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So let me do a quick check of that. Young, very young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like very young 8 or very
Well, he's
young
gonna
like
look it up.
12?
But see, this is like an era of television I totally missed
Yeah.
because I lived in France.
Oh wow.
I mean, I think
okay.
I'm also a little bit older as part of it, but also I lived in France. So like I just did not have cable television, and when I moved here in junior high, it was like, what is this cable television?
Ooh la la!
Yeah.
Sacre bleu.
So this was released in February of 1994. So I would have been 7 at the time.
God, I'm so old.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I definitely missed this because when I was, I mean, not 7, but probably the time I was 10, I mean, there was an era of adult dark anthologies for adults at night. I mean, there was the Twilight Zone redo, but there was also one called Dark Room that was
Yeah.
only
Oh,
lasted
yeah.
for a season that was pitch black. I mean, and also traumatizing to me. So I think, I guess I didn't. I mean, we didn't really have Nickelodeon when I was a kid. We didn't have cable,
Right.
so it was adult stuff or nothing in terms
Yeah.
of
It
this
was
kind
Dynasty.
of TV.
It was
Which is a nightmare into itself. So, but we did have some cool, crazy stuff. I mean, back then. But yeah, I definitely missed that era of that level of kind of middle grade horror.
Right.
I don't remember the one you're talking about.
Dark Room?
Yeah, Dark Room.
I mean, Dark Room only lasted for a season, and it was mostly 2 or 3 episodes. It was basically a real horror, grim version of Twilight Zone. It included again adaptations of some author's stuff, but most of the stories ended very badly. I mean, I don't mean badly like poor quality. I
Right,
mean, they
right.
would like, people are not getting out of here alive,
Right.
effectively.
There was definitely there was a doll horror thing. I remember because
Yeah.
Unsolved Mysteries was
Oh yeah,
on and around that time, and there were a few there was one of those families who had a haunted house, and the dolls featured in that pretty big. And I remember being really into paranormal investigation stuff, and this was before they had the reality show stuff. So you
Of
just
the Ghost Hunters.
you just
and
have to
things
go
like
get
that,
the
yeah.
books that were there was a Ghostly Register, which was excerpts from somebody's
Whoa.
basically fan magazine where they had cataloged they were scientists, all these ghost phenomena. And some of the creepiest ones, of course, were the porcelain doll. It's just so that uncanny valley
Yes.
thing that just and then to be turned into that, and it's just it's two levels, things that should not be moving and then becoming immobile.
Right.
And Twilight Zone, I mean, obviously Twilight Zone has multiple episodes that are
Oh, the
you
dolls,
know, Talking
yeah.
Tina or whatever, and then
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
the ventriloquist doll where the guy becomes the doll and
Yeah.
and the ventriloquist doll becomes the guy and stuff. So you got
And there's the episode where there's a bunch of people in a white cylindrical room, and they're trying to escape, and they're all in
Yes.
costumes. And then at the end, it's revealed they're all dolls
Yeah.
in a garbage can.
yes, I forgot about that. Oh my god,
Yeah,
Whoa.
that's one that stuck
Yeah.
with me for some
long
reason.
before Annabelle. So
Long before Toy Story.
yes,
So would there be other episodes that you would recommend, or other maybe parallel works that kind of what would be? Yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah.
What are other episodes? That you
I
might
think
recommend?
that the pilot, I think it's Laughing in the Dark or Laughter in the Dark. Honestly, I think that this is of that generation where you can Google best Are You Afraid of the Dark, and there'll be probably some BuzzFeed article talking about the 10 best, and they probably will be the 10 best. I think that that's honestly I know I'm such a millennial, but
No,
I do
that's
think
good.
that that's the best where to go for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so if this is your jumping off point,
Mhm.
in your career of ingesting the horror stuff, what was kind of next for you And
Uh,
describe the rabbit hole a little bit.
Okay, so the rabbit hole was this Goosebumps books, which we've talked about before, but those were coming out sort of right now, right at this moment we're talking about. From there, specifically, he did Choose Your Own Adventure Goosebumps books, which I like. I could not have been more hardwired to love something than that mixture of horror and like gamification. From there, I like got like I did a sort of quantum leap into Stephen King. As I got only a little bit older, like we talked about last episode or a few episodes back. And then from there, it was, finally being old enough to rent videos at the video store that had the coolest covers were the horror movies, and I rented like movies I should not have because Puppet Master, but Toxic Avenger, way too young to
Head
see
of
that.
the family.
Yeah,
The first Toxic Avenger.
the first Toxic
Wow.
Avenger.
Yeah, that is
There was just no parental like video supervision, right? I had like a TV with a tape deck built into it, and I could rent, pick a movie a week when we all went to the place.
You're like Faces of Death looks great.
Yeah, this is great. And my home video store had a very robust horror section. It actually had the horror was in a back room.
With a purple door.
Yeah. But it wasn't a back room where there was like arcade games and horror movies all along the wall.
That's
And
how they
so
get you in there.
That's how they got you in.
They get you in with the arcade games, and before you know it,
Yeah.
you're renting Full Moon Features movies.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like, I love Full Moon Features.
Me too.
But then, from there, like all these like B movies, because those are what were the most interesting, like Silent Night, Deadly Night, Beware, Children at Play, I think was a major one for me growing up. And then once I got into sort of high school, and this is all middle school, oh my God. But once I got into high school and then college, I started to really diversify.
Like Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah, well, honestly, like my freshman year of college, I lived in Philly and I lived in the dorms, and there was this amazing video store, TLA Video, that had,
of course.
yeah, that had just incredible deep cut horror section, and yes, I like had to know what all these things were, and we're talking like still pretty early internet, so still like internet like 2.0,
Yeah.
I would say. Where you certainly couldn't stream a movie or watch anything more than a 30-second clip.
TLA was awesome. TLA was finally someone who like confirmed that Q
Yeah.
is a great movie for me because they were.
Yes, yeah. And it was just this sort of mecca in Philly, and that really helped sort of broaden it from there. And I went to school for screenwriting, and the movie that I made that is in post-production, as we record this, was my senior screenplay originally. And so it's just this sort of very natural progression, and that was, 10 years ago, and now I'm here, and yeah.
Now you've peaked
Now I've peaked.
on 5 spooky 4th 6.
But now I'm like reverting, right? So now I'm like really interested in telling stories for children and getting back into children, sort of young adult and middle grade storytelling. And so I've like regressed, and now I'm like inhaling Are You Afraid of the Dark again? Goosebumps, Erie, Indiana.
Well, Erie, Indiana I think Erie, Indiana actually even works for adult audiences just as
Still
well as
very
kids.
good,
Like
yeah.
Erie, Indiana's an awesome show.
Yeah.
I think Holt has that all on DVD,
I do
or now it's
indeed.
ripped.
Yeah,
on
I don't think
computer.
I ripped it. I don't know if I
Oh.
did. Maybe I did.
Really good.
It's a
Very
great
weird
series.
release
Yeah.
drama around that show, which I love too. And so I'm going back to that and a lot of middle grade fiction and trying to reread these great old scary stories.
So in doing that, like, all right, like I kind of have theories on development of, our like development of taste and our culture for like how film storytelling has developed and how series television has developed. Like we've become more finessed and refined in doing these things, and it all looks a lot better too. Like we can make it look a lot more real and put you in there. Is there, or are there like certain things that like people are avoiding showing? Like I guess the question would be, are there things that like kids aren't being shown still in some way? I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but like,
I think there'll
is it
always
like
be...
how is it like has there been any like developments in terms of like, hey, this is actually okay for kids to be watching or like to present to them that maybe like hadn't been like that was, I don't know. We look at this episode and it's very sweet and innocent, and there were some like weirder, darker Are You Afraid of the Darks? Are there like would you have this sweetness, innocence kind of like thing, or have we evolved? Have we like moved past that to where things are like, this is like too like
I hope not.
okay.
I think, and maybe not so much in middle grade. In YA, we've definitely in young adult fiction, definitely jumped. We've made a huge jump in a lot of cases where the sort of saccharine, the sort of sweeter stories that are nicely packed together, like Sabriel, a little bit less common now. It's a lot more end of the world. I mean, these are fads that come and go, right? So end of the world, vampires, these things come, they go, and they come back again. But I think that what has been left in the wake of those are young adult stories that really, in horror, young adult stories that are pushing the limits of what is young adult, especially as a lot of the young adult readership is actually adults coming back and reading it now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, that's definitely the trend.
Right. And then also just different types of stories, different voices. There's such a push for diversity in YA. And so that's really impacting just a whole different, like, we're just looking at things completely. They're looking at things completely differently.
Yeah, you got to diversify because
right.
you can't just have wizards. You got to have
Yeah,
wizards
exactly.
and then sometimes vampires
And a few elves.
some Greek gods.
That's right.
Yeah, you got to really mix it up.
But in middle grade, it's still, it at least for me, and I'm just a fan, honestly, right now, and like a researcher, basically, is how I would describe myself. There's still that core of sweetness. There are some amazing, they're not horror, but amazing middle grade books that have come out in the past 10 years. Even like Neil Gaiman's Graveyard Book.
I
It's
love
still
Graveyard
so
Book.
sweet.
Yeah.
It's got such a sweet heart in the middle of it.
Cool.
Yeah.
People who haven't read that, go read that. It's
Yeah.
really cool. It's really easy to read. I think I lent out my copy.
Also,
and it's
the audiobook is also terrific.
Mm.
It's read by Neil Gaiman.
Oh.
He's got a great voice.
All right. Any thoughts on Are You Afraid of the Dark? Tale of the Dollmaker to wrap us out. Matt.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I saw it. I mean, I have to admit, I'm probably so jaded that it was. I was like, this girl has it coming. I mean, I was like, she broke into this house. She's just asking. She's asking for it. I mean, come on. But it was fine. I mean, I thought the casting of the girl, frankly, is what saves the whole show for me because
Absolutely.
she actually is so not the typical like pretty girl you see on this stuff. She's not even like the other kids that all tell the stories.
Right.
She's so awkward in a way, but still strong, and so I think she actually completely makes the entire episode worthwhile for me. And she was a real find for them, I thought, for that. I mean, really interesting. It does make me want to go back and kind of explore more of those shows. But I have to admit that the middle grade area, it does often have that sweetness for me that I think I'm just even back as a kid, I was just like, let him have it.
Yeah. And sweet little me was like, thank you. I
Exactly.
will accept it.
Well, that's why I'm
Karma's
like
real.
writing my own ending.
Exactly.
I'm like, yeah, that's what they had to show the kids. But I know there's a
The real
page.
ending.
There's a page where someone drew like a shattered like porcelain face on the ground.
With a tear, with your tear.
Yeah, with the tear.
I will say it was interesting. So I had mistakenly watched an episode of the '80s Twilight Zone, thinking that was Matt's pick, and then I watched the '90s Are You Afraid of the Dark, and then we watched the new Sci-Fi Channel show. And it was interesting because I was like, wow, I can't believe we're all picking kind of like short form TV for this. It's just kind of amazing the kind of the step up that television production has, kind of the leaps and bounds that they've made. I imagine Matt a couple weeks ago was talking about, like the old It miniseries might not hold up like you remember, but I do know that like Stranger Things and forgetting this Channel Zero, like the production value and the acting is just so good. Like compared to these same subject matters would have just kind of been like whatever Canadian like theater actor we can dig up to be in this show.
Yeah, no, it's like the budgets they're like movie quality now.
Yeah.
Well, but in 20 years, it'll be like, it's just not holographic enough.
But so well the films of the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but they'll like re-holograph some of the classics.
Turner will do it.
Yeah.
Turner's going to hire his people.
Casablanca in holographo. Put on your hollow helms and enjoy your eye helm.
Warning: do not use iHelm on the subway.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just think that it's nice, and I think that the costs of a lot of this stuff has come down. Like the costs of a lot of
Yeah.
this filming and
Right.
things are like a fraction of what they would have been back then, even for just filming on video.
I mean, it's amazing to think, like, was this like shot on film? Like it must have been video. But
I'm fairly certain that Twilight Zone was shot on film.
The Twilight
Right.
Zone.
Yeah,
I think
80s,
was.
yes.
Right.
I mean, most of those directors were actually, pretty big movie
Yeah,
directors. I
yeah.
mean, Joe Dante and other people were like doing episodes of Twilight Zone for, Wes Craven had a great episode in there.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, I think Are You Afraid of the Dark was probably Betacam or something like
Mhm.
that.
it looks like it. Yeah,
that's part of its charm, right?
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean-
Well, you can
Absolutely.
go to later Twilight Zones were shot on TV cameras. You start to get the like weird
Well, the of the first
of the
generation
original
First gen,
series,
yeah.
yeah. Which so you watch the evolution from film to TV cameras.
There's a really neat
Very
quality
odd.
to some of those TV cameras,
yeah,
though.
with
Like
the
in the
persistence,
blacks,
yeah.
there's some really neat things
Yeah,
that go on.
And also, there's
visually.
like weird, the bright lights also kind of flare and streak and
Yeah,
things like
yeah.
that.
But just to circle back on that, I it's just really neat that I think we're in a really neat time for people being able to tell interesting stories and they still look really cool and
Yeah.
look really neat.
Well, I had heard, I think, about Are You Afraid of the Dark a lot, but I had never seen it myself. So this was my introduction to it.
Cool. That's amazing.
That might be
Awesome.
mine as well.
Whoa!
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of, the most like charming and dated thing about it is the intro and like
Yeah.
like the kid who's like, she's like, I'm bringing you this story, and the kid's like, that's like story about dolls, lame, like that whole interaction. I just loved it.
That
And then-
song is also the theme song is totally ingrained. I can't think of scary without thinking of that. Like, it's really great.
Yeah.
Like,
And what's the name of their club or whatever? It's
the
like,
Midnight Society.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
And I like the end button too when they were like, "Oh, here's a doll. It looks just like you, Johnny, or whatever his name is." He's like, "Where does that come from?"
Yeah,
And
and they-
she's like, that's another story.
Yeah.
It's just so
or when they
punchy.
they have to put out the fire, so he stands over it, and he actually says in this episode he says I don't know, and that he jumps out of the way as the slime puts the fire out.
That's right.
No, but they do. He just has like a red fire bucket full of water.
Yeah. Every episode.
Well, you bring
And
it.
that
You bring it
calls-
But
to
I
the
thought you
campsite.
use sand in those. Maybe I don't know.
I'm sure that you can use any number of
Yeah.
things to douse a fire.
Oh, sand.
Sometimes urine.
It's also great to just think about, like, for me, this is a great opportunity for me to step back. It's so ingrained. It was just every week. It wasn't, it's not something I visited and didn't visit.
What day of the week would it air?
This would be on Saturday nights. So this
Oh,
was
wow.
part of SNCC, which they did, which was
Yeah.
their Saturday night block. And this would be the final thing that aired before it switched over
Nick
to
at night.
Nick at Night.
It's like 7 or 8 o'clock or 7:30.
I think that this was like 10 on
Oh,
Saturday
wow,
night,
so much
or
later,
9.
okay.
Yeah.
So when
Definitely
when
later
did
than
Goosebumps become a show that was on?
That
on
was like
Nickelodeon.
that feels to me like 97-ish,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm not sure if that was even Nickelodeon. I think that might have been Fox.
Hmm.
But also just to like take a step back for this and think about like what a great title. Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
Question mark. It's brilliant. It's yes, kind of.
That's like that had me reminiscing to like what was I watching at that time, and like that's when I was in my big like alien phase,
Hmm.
and because I was watching X-Files, I was
Right.
really into X-Files, but then there were also all these other like pseudo like documentary-ish shows that were about alien autopsies
Well,
and stuff
remember
like that.
Fox
Oh,
was
yeah.
in their heyday, and they had like
Yeah.
they had the autopsy video.
Yeah,
We're gonna
yeah.
show it, and they like
So I would watch.
That scared me so bad.
I had
Yeah.
a TV in my room at the foot of my bed,
Oh,
and I was always like would wait till my parents go to bed and then turn it back on, kind of thing, and was watching it like way too late. And I was watching all these spooky alien things, and they would really freak me out. And then I would try to sleep and like imagine aliens,
Yeah.
like.
Well, the best is like we had these like a big sort of like picture window, like the 3-panel thing, and the TV's right there,
Uh-huh.
and it's like it's dark, and it's just like treetops and woods
Yeah,
out there and darkness,
Like,
and
"Hey,
you're
what's
watching,
that UFO?
and you're
What?"
watching, like that illustrator Charlie who got like abducted,
Yeah.
like his tale in Unsolved Mysteries, and the music's playing, and it kind of goes off, and you're like, what's out there in the darkness? What's out there for me?
And
And I
at,
go-
at
and
the
then you
whole
go
at the whole
hunting
family
and see
house
who
too,
is
they
out
had this
there.
Great Dane that was huge. I'm sure it just popped up at the wrong
Oh,
moment
yeah,
out
all
on
the
the other
time.
side of the glass.
Yeah. Crazy grandma gets out of the attic and runs around.
Oh, Grandma,
Crazy grandma, get back here!
put your knife away, Grandma.
Y'all
We're not the Greeks.
like the kids who are loud down the street, and you have to be like, y'all shouldn't be so loud around y'all.
We got rules around here.
We gotta
just
be-
like you.
You gotta be real careful around y'all.
So are you Southern or are you
No, it's
New
like,
England?
you can't get there from here.
Warm today,
Warm today, mother.
warmer still tomorrow.
Pass the syrup, mother.
But yeah, so 1994,
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Next Generation.
Mhm.
Yeah, but that was definitely the heyday of reruns of Unsolved Mysteries on all the time.
Mm-hmm. Robert Stack,
Yeah,
keeping it stacked.
keeping it mysterious.
Keeping it unexplained.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then he'd flip it over to MTV and watch 120 minutes.
Or the Max. On
Or the
what's-
Max,
what's
yeah.
television.
the head.
Ugh, the head.
So in 1994, I still was not allowed to watch MTV. I could only watch VH1.
But then,
Wow.
but then you'd watch it and then you'd apologize to your mom. And
Yeah,
send yourself
exactly.
to bed.
I'd tell on myself.
You're like,
I
I'm
was
sorry I
allowed-
had to watch the third season of The Real World. It's L.A.
It's LA. Yeah.
I had to watch it because Jonathan Richman was on there.
Right. Yeah, like for me, this era is an era of this and being like good all week so that I was allowed to stay up late and watch Mystery Science Theater. Like
Mm.
those are my two, passions as a kid.
Yeah.
Like Are You Afraid of the Dark and Mystery Science Theater.
I think that was the era too when they would have the marathons
Oh, the
on
Turkey Day?
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
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 That was a blast.
Nostalgia.
No, we're just painting a
Time
a
capsule.
window so people
Right.
could see the like what else was happening.
So
in the world.
if they step through it, they'll be trapped in our childhood,
In our dollhouse of
and
child.
they'll turn into a plaid shirt.
Now you're listening to the Haunted Podcast.
You're already turning into Jinko jeans.
Oh, no. It's too late for me. Run.
You can't run. Your jeans are too big.
What happened to your hand? It's a wallet chain. Shink, 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 whatever the sound of wallet chains are. Shink,
Yeah, no,
shink,
it's good. Some good Foley work. You got it.
All right, so being turned into a doll is scary.
Yep.
This is my last question before we wrap here. What thing would you most not want to be turned into besides a doll? Jules.
Besides a doll?
Yeah, what would you not want to be turned into? A doll's on the table too.
But there's so many things.
You can be a doll. It's okay.
All right, so here's the other one. What if you had to be turned into an inanimate object? What inanimate object? would
inanimate.
yeah. What inanimate object would you get turned into?
Oh, so
If
I'm
you-
choosing
That he
this?
wanted to
Yeah,
be.
that you want that you have to choose. You're
Can you
gonna
be
get
like
turned-
a haunted thing?
No, you're inanimate.
Yeah, but like there are haunted dolls.
You can have
in
a
real
sing-
life, there
You
are
can
haunted
have like a
dolls
single
out there.
tear, but that's about it. That's a level of emotion.
So you couldn't become somebody's like donor hand that
Could choke people.
Yeah.
No, you'd be inanimate. You could be like their donor.
Well, it would be
plastic hand.
inanimate until
It
lightning
comes to
strikes
life.
it or something.
Idle hands.
Yeah.
What would Jocko? What about you?
I would want to be like a TV.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah.
Matt, what would you?
What's wrong with you people?
No, the answer is a mandolin.
Okay,
you
got it.
blew it. Matt.
Exactly.
You blew it.
Sorry.
I said, wait, who's a mandolin?
Matt is. So he could be
A
in a
computer. Stop on it downloaded. Jocko, where can people watch it one more time?
People can watch it on Amazon has it right now. I'm sure like
It's on YouTube.
Shout has it on DVD or
Yeah.
something.
Or you can probably
If
find
you-
someone who maybe put it on like Daily Motion or something.
Yeah, it's on
random
YouTube as
place.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet
Uh,
Ranker has some episodes up there.
I wouldn't be surprised. Rancor?
I don't know, Ranker.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just-
Sure.
Yeah, or you can rent it on Amazon or buy it on Amazon. It's like pretty cheap. I think it's like $1 an episode, pretty
Cool.
much.
And it's which season, which episode? Again?
So this is technically like season 3, episode 5 or 6. I forget. But on Amazon they've got it in volumes, and this is in volume 2.
Thanks again, Jocko.
My pleasure. Oh yeah.
Oh, you awake? Yeah. Not bad for a doll story.
I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed. Good night, everybody.
Yo, Bet! You forgot your doll! This thing looks just like you. Where'd you get that? That's a whole nother story.
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial and error.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of the New to You Show. I was your host, John Holt. You can find me on Instagram at Lord_Ghost and on Twitter at Lord Joho. You can find my other podcasts where we play RPGs at boardghost.com. We are just wrapping up a story using an It playset of rules that the designer sent us, so that'll be kind of fun. And we are a week into the Wound and Stab book reading podcast, and we're a day away from Halloween, but
And which book are you reading on the podcast?
I think in the one that's come out that should be coming out today is The Wine Dark Sea. Last week was The Garden of Forking Paths, and from there we're going to, I believe the next thing we'll do is be introing and starting a novel. So that'll be a multi-episode run from there.
Cool.
Jules, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at BeautifulJules. How about you, Keith?
You can find me at earthlingkeith.com. What about you, Jocko?
You can find me everywhere at Jocko Farino, GIACOFURINO.
All right, and Matt.
And you can find me on Facebook, Matt Schwartz from New York City, either reviewing horror movies or talking about why American Horror Story is the worst thing to happen to horror entertainment since Eli Roth.
All right.
Who actually just cut the new promo for the next American Horror.
Oh, shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
But before we move to the next section, is there something new that's anything new to you?
I think there's something new to Jules.
Oh, Jules, what about you? Is there something new to you?
Yes, there is. So it's an iPhone or mobile phone game. I have it for the iPhone. I don't know if it's
Besides
available
our new
on-
iPhones, Jules.
No, this is not a new iPhone.
But we'll have them soon.
Yes, soon. It's called Inks, and it's essentially just a little twist on a pinball game. So I just love so essentially it's very similar to a pinball game, but you have kind of various circular routes on the board where you're trying to get the ball to touch all these colored spots on the perimeter. And as you hit those spots, they kind of explode into like realistic watercolory paint splats. And also, as you try to hit your targets, as the ball rolls, it draws lines, the paths over and over again, so you can kind of see where you've been and where you haven't, and what you need to hit your targets and things like that. So it's just really just very simple, just well executed, and
is it
beautiful
like a
art
paddle,
style.
like a pinball machine, like you're hitting it with a paddle, or how do you?
Yeah,
control-
there's two little
Flippers.
paddles at the bottom, flippers at the bottom of the screen, and you can miss and go down the hole just like a standard pinball. But it kind of adds these other little twists to it, and a different type of goal, and it's just one of those games where it's like all the little details are right, and it makes it kind of addictive, and I just love it. Its visual design.
It's called Inks.
Yeah, Inks, and it was I think I downloaded it because it was like the free app of the week or whatever recently, and so I don't even know how much it cost, but it's probably like $3 or something, and it's called Inks, and it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
It's a
All
good way
right.
to pass.
And that's on the Apple stores. Do you know if they have an
Yeah.
Android version?
I do not know,
But maybe.
but maybe.
So people can look for Inks, INKS.
Mhm.
All right, little pinball game for your phone. Before we go into what's coming up next week, I want to thank Jocko and Matt for being on again. It
Thanks
was
for
a
having
blast.
Yeah,
It
thank
was
you.
It was
great to
great.
have you guys on for
Yeah.
a 5-person
Yeah,
experiment.
for a
Really
whole
good.
for a whole
Yeah.
month.
And it was great to talk to you guys both about horror. I like Keith was saying, this is one of my favorite times a year and times of the show. I like
Yeah.
this topic of spooky. It's the reason we keep coming back to it and keep it going. You know, we don't always do Christmas shows,
Right.
but Halloween shows we do. But yeah, so again, thank you guys both for being on. It was
Thanks for
great
having
having you
us.
on here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So next week we're going to start our Brain Candy. It's a content-free consumption episode. So we're going to start with my pick, Repossessed, the Leslie Nielsen feature from 1992 or something. I don't know. But anyhow, go find Repossessed with Linda Blair and Leslie Nielsen. You will probably be sorry.
And I confirmed Inks is only available on the iOS App Store.
Okay, cool. So, gang, to find out more about the topics and all the stuff that we talked about, go to newtoyoushow.com. You can follow us on Twitter at newtoyoushow, and you can go subscribe, follow the show on iTunes or your preferred listening portal. And if you're on iTunes, go leave a review or a rating. And if you've got someone saying, "What's a good podcast to listen to?" tell them New to You Show might not be so bad. Or especially if it's their first podcast, because they won't really have any other context.
Right,
They're
right.
like,
And they might
what
just
kind of
believe you.
podcast? And I mean, we're not the worst, right?
Right, no,
It's
no,
like a
not
good
at all.
middle
Right.
ground.
Yeah, yeah.
Or if you think we are the worst, you know what? It's only uphill from here. Wait.
If you think we are the worst, give us some constructive criticism on YouTube.
Yeah,
or
do that.
something.
Do that through like Twitter or
I mean,
something.
on iTunes. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have any bad reviews, leave it on Serial. All right, gang. It may not be new,
But
maybe it was
new
to you. Explosion sound. This pitiful life is all about the music. 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 This pitiful life is all about the music.
With him together forever, without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not dead. They're two separate entities.